We're on.
Good morning. I was hoping you'd drop by this morning. And the reason was I know that you love a good story. And I've got really a good story for you today. Uh, the way these stories come about is my wife, I'm a caregiver. And my wife has been suffering with dementia for about 4 years now. And I've been the primary caregiver, and she loves to read, or she used to, and she loves to hear stories. And so I would read stories to her as we sit here in the swing. And it just occurred to me that probably there's 53 million caregivers in the United States. Can you believe that? And that means there's probably 53 million patients. So there's 100 million of us sitting around trying to figure out how to get through the day. And I would read stories, and it occurred to me that it might be fun for me just to write the stories and read them to her. And so that's what I've been doing for the last several years. And these stories that I'm going to read to you, I've put them together and crafted them over the years. And so today, I'm going to read to you a little story I put together. It's called The Back Roads of Woodford County. Chapter 1. The summer of 1954 came to Woodford County like a hymn sung slow and steady. The grass was high and blue in the fields, and the air carried the sweet smell of bluegrass, feed, leather, fresh cut hay. On the Worthington farm, you could hear the gentle thud of hooves against the turf long before you saw the horses. They moved across the pasture like they owned the earth, and in a way they did. This was the heart of Kentucky thoroughbred country, where bloodlines were currency, and a champion colt could be worth more than the grand house it grazed beside. It was down the long gravel road, past the iron gates with the gilded W, that the big Cadillac eased to a stop. Out stepped a woman in a pale blue dress, her hair pinned neat, her face marked by the wear of Atlantic winds and years of quiet struggle. Holding her hand was a boy, 6 years old, with black hair black as a raven's wing, and his eyes the green-gray of Irish rain. He carried no suitcase, only a battered satchel slung across his little shoulders. "Ronan," she murmured, leaning down to smooth his hair, "this is where we'll be living now." The front door swung open, and a man stepped onto the porch. Gideon Worthington was a tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a voice that carried authority without needing to be raised. He moved toward them with a smile that was almost too practiced. "Maeve," he said warmly, taking her hands, then looking down at the boy. "And this must be young Ronan." The boy nodded, shy but steady in his gaze. Gideon studied him for a moment, longer than was polite, seeing something familiar in the shape of his jaw, the tilt of his head. From the corner of the porch, another boy appeared, same age, same size, but fair-haired, with a sharpness of privilege in his stance. This was Asher Worthington, heir to the land and everything on it. His eyes flickered from Ronan to Maeve and back again, a quick measure that said more than words could. "This here's Asher," Gideon said, resting a hand on each boy's shoulder. "You two will be seeing a lot of each other." The boys exchanged a brief, appraising look. Neither smiled. The first afternoon passed in a blur of introductions, and instructions. Maeve was shown to a modest room in the converted carriage house. Ronan was told he'd have chores in the stables once school started. The house staff watched them with polite curiosity, whispering in corners. No one explained exactly why Maeve and her son had been brought here, but the air was thick with the kind of knowledge that doesn't need explaining. When the sun began to drop over the paddocks, Ronan slipped away from the main yard. He followed the fence line, tracing its weathered boards past the broodmare pasture, through a small grove of walnut trees, and then he saw it, a narrow dirt path leading toward the far edge of the property. Curiosity carried him down until he came upon a small, weathered cabin tucked into a clearing, half hidden by honeysuckle and wild roses. The windows were clouded with dust, the porch sagging, but there was something in the way the place stood, quiet, stubborn, that made him feel as though it was waiting just for him. He stepped onto the porch, peered inside, and smiled faintly to himself. It smelled of cedar and time. He didn't know it yet, but this cabin would be the compass point of his life in Kentucky, the place where paths converged and choices were made, for better or worse. That evening, as the Worthington dinner table glowed under its chandelier, Gideon sat at the head with Maeve to his right. Asher lounged in his chair, picking at his food. Ronan sat straighter, watching, learning. He saw the way Gideon commanded the room without raising his voice. He saw the deference of the servants, the easy confidence of a boy who had grown up in a world that belonged to him. And he knew, without understanding how, that this was a life built on more than just money and horses. It was built on position, on blood. He would come to understand those things in time. For now, he was just a boy in a strange land, eating supper with strangers and feeling the first faint stirrings of a rivalry he couldn't yet name. So that's the end of chapter 1 of the back roads of Woodford County. We'll be moving into chapter 2 as we go along. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm going to take a real quick break and we'll be right back.